right into it. So this first main topic is going to be a bit of a hybrid. I'm going to be talking about the match reactions for the Manchester United and Chelsea game because, as some of you may have picked up, I am a Manchester United fan, and also what that has to do with the FAWSL title race implications going forward. So let's get right into my post-match reactions. I would say that, there's so many thoughts that I have about this game, but I'll start off just by kind of saying this. With the results of today, at this point, I think the title race is still anybody's game. There's only a couple points that separate Manchester City, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Manchester United. I still think one of those four teams will end up winning the title this year. I just don't think there's anybody better. I thought Everton were going to be contenders for this season, but as recent form has shown, I think they're more starting to be pretenders, which I know that rhymes. I know it's kind of interesting, but I don't think Everton will be one of the stronger teams that will come out on top this season. So I'm picking as of today that one of those four teams will win it all, especially since we're about halfway through the season. Overall, with United's loss for today, I don't think that by any means puts them out of the running to win the title. I think they still have a very good shot at it, if not one of the better shots at it. We'll start off by looking at this from a holistic perspective rather than a technical one. Overall, I think United just had a bad day at the office. It was the first time that they had played one of the big four opponents, I believe, away from home. So when you're not on your own home turf, that certainly makes things a little bit more difficult, especially when you're comfortable at your home pitch. They were without one of the best players in the WSL as of late, Tobin Heath, due to an injury. So that's another big piece of creativity that they lose out on, which they certainly needed today because they had almost no shots. I believe they had like four shots, I believe one of which were on target, and that was the one that Lauren James ended up scoring. So there's also that to note. One other thing to note too is that when you're constantly not losing any matches and you're rarely drawing, you just keep winning, winning, winning. After a while, I think it starts to you start to rest on your laurels a little bit, right? I mean, Man United have been in first for several weeks now, and I think that this is all speculation, of course, just fan speculation. I'm not an expert by any means, but when you're in first, you just tend to rest on your laurels. It's just kind of human nature. You're not going to perform nearly as your best as when you're chasing something. And I think that also might have gotten into the squad's head, and that's why they had a little bit of trouble today. Plus, Chelsea's just been on fire form like the last 3 or 4 weeks, so good on them as well. And with all of that in mind, I guess I'm not really too worried about United performing going forward. I think they realize now that, hey, if we're going to win this league, we got to bring it every single week, no matter what adversity we face, like today with Tobin being gone if they're playing away from home. The best teams in these leagues, they don't let those things stop them from winning the game. You have to prove week in and week out that you are the best team, and you can't let things like that get to your head and distract you. One other reason why I'm not really too worried about United going down the stretch, and I'm sorry for all you non-United fans who are listening to this right now if I'm boring you at all, but just kind of stick with me a little bit here. Um, One of the main reasons I'm not worried about them is because of who they have at the helm. That's Casey Stoney. For those of you who don't know, I am extremely, extremely high on Casey Stoney. I think the world of her. Just when I think I can't love Casey Stoney anymore, she always finds a way to just grasp my heart and hold on to it for good. Um, Interestingly enough, yesterday, I believe I read this on the BBC website, she gave an interview just talking a little bit about how United, even though they're in first, even though the men's team is also in first, that none of that really matters. I believe this is a direct quote. She said that you don't win any trophies in January. You don't win the game at halftime. You have to perform week in, week out. You always have to be looking out to your future fixtures rather than looking where you currently are at. You cannot rest on your laurels. You have to keep pushing. You have to keep going. So basically what that indicates to me is that Casey's got a plan moving forward. She's been in these situations as a player before. She knows that she cannot relent if United is going to want to win the squad, and neither can the squad. And I think she'll do a great job of getting that message across to them, and that they'll push for the title and hopefully have a really, really good shot at it. I think United does. And with a manager like Casey Stoney, how could you not, right? Um, it just baffled me how much of a holistic perspective she took on their position in first as of yesterday. And that's just funny because that was just yesterday. Like I think she had a feeling in her mind that, hey, we've got to keep going. We've got to keep performing at the highest level. We can't let setbacks hurt us. So I've got all the faith in Casey Stone in the world that she will continue this squad in the right direction. And plus, since they're only 3 seasons in and they're already at the top of the table, starting from the championship, not even existing as a team or an organization, all the way to just a couple seasons later being at the top of Tier 1 women's football. That's very impressive, and that's really encouraging. So, one other thing to note, too, tactically, she's proven a couple times that she can make the right tactical decisions in order to exploit teams' weaknesses. I'll give you an example. Manchester City, Manchester United, when they played their last derby, not in the Continental Tires League Cup, but in the FAWSL, they were down 2-0 at home to City, and she made a few adjustments at halftime. She also subbed on Lauren James, ironically enough, again in that game, and they ended up equalizing and almost winning it in extra time that game. So, and she proved today with the sub on with Lauren James. She subbed on Lauren James for Kristen Press, and Lauren James scored like I think 3 or 4 minutes directly after. So she clearly knows the way to make the squad tick. She knows how to use them effectively to the best of their ability. So I think she's proven that she's got a good head on her shoulders and that she's going to lead this team to greatness. Um, that's more of the holistic view and my thoughts on the match in general. Let me kind of attack this from a deeper technical perspective. Basically, when you've got two excellent teams like Manchester United and Chelsea playing against each other in a big game like this, since both of the teams are performing so well, the team that's going to make the fewest mistakes is going to win. For today, that team was certainly Chelsea. They took advantage of mistakes in the back line a few times and ended up capitalizing enough to the point where they could pull out the win. Let's look at this first from the United perspective. First off, I think United today were really, really poor offensively. I believe they had one shot on goal, which was what Lauren James' scoring was, and then I believe they had 3 other shots that weren't even nearly threatening. They barely tested the keeper today for Chelsea. Um, Starting back up in the first half, I think the midfield had a ton of problems with passing, getting the ball up forward. I believe in the 10th through the 25th minute, I felt really bad for Kirsty Hansen, who's playing on the right wing for the game today, because the midfield would get the ball, they'd play in these long balls, and they were just missing every single one. They'd overshoot their teammates. Kirsty Hansen, between that time period that I just specified, I believe they overshot her by like 3 or 4 times in a row. You just see her take off, and you're like, well, there goes another ball. That's a goal kick. Full credit to Kirsty Hansen, though. She ran it all the way to the touchline and to the goal line as often as she could, and sometimes the ball just too much sauce on it. I even saw Leah Galton today. She had a whole ton of time and space. Tried passing it to the left wing because that's where she was playing today, and overshot Kristen Press by a long shot too. So sometimes you just got a bad day at the office, right? Sometimes the passes aren't clicking. Sometimes the attack isn't flowing. That's just kind of how it goes some days. Today was that day. And I want to say one thing really quickly too about defense. Let's approach this from a defensive perspective. I have said on previous podcast episodes that I think Man United is a stronger defensive team than Chelsea. Well, today I was proven that wrongly today. United, I think, spent most of the game on the back foot. And I think Sam Kerr and Fran Kirby, they're red hot in the league right now. They're just scoring machines. They made so many intelligent attacking runs and combo passes between Pernille Harder and the midfield. A lot of times it would catch the United center backs flat-footed, and Chelsea would get a chance. It happened so many occasions in the first half. The second half was a little bit better, but even then, that's when another crucial mistake happened, and then Chelsea took the lead. So that I guess that's a big credit to Chelsea, but also a bit of a downgrade on United because they defended so much and they defended poorly. There are games when you can defend a ton and still win, but when you're defending a lot and you're doing it poorly, that usually doesn't bode well for your squad. As I kind of mentioned earlier, United today made more mistakes, and I believe a lot of that is not only on the attacking side, but also on the defending side. In the second half, when Fran Kirby scored her goal, there was a really high lofted ball, I believe, coming from Chelsea. And I don't know what the Tunes and center defense were really doing. I think there might have been a miscommunication, but they kind of let the ball drop, and I don't know if they knew Fran Kirby was right behind them, but then Fran Kirby just skirts right in front of him, steals the ball, and then scores a goal on Mary Earps, and that ended up being the difference in the game. So, like I said, the team who made the fewest mistakes won today. It was Chelsea. United, including that mistake, just made more mistakes today. So that's just kind of how that cookie crumbles. But full marks to Fran Kirby for taking advantage of that mistake and seeing it, because she's just been playing world class lately, as a player should. So she's doing great. Um, let's look at some more positive notes from the United perspective. So I think the one good thing that they do consistently is definitely the high press. There was a lot of times, in fact, I'd say 9 out of 10 times whenever Chelsea was playing the ball out the back on a goal kick, United's high press was so effective that they'd be running like chickens with their head cut off, and they'd either throw the ball away and just boot it out of bounds, or they would have a sloppy pass and give it to United defenders. So United, I think, did that really, really well today. Unfortunately, I just don't think their scoring prowess was quite enough in order to take full advantage of that. So full marks to them for that. Um, again, I will go back a little bit to Casey Stoney's ability to make tactical changes and subs as well. She subs on Lauren James for Kristen Press. Kristen Press didn't look like she was performing too well today, and Lauren James comes on 3 minutes later. She scores. So clearly, Casey Stoney knows something about that front line, knows something about Lauren James in order to make her tick and make her score goals. So full credit to her for doing that. So that about does it for United's positives. Let's look at the Chelsea side of things. Overall, Chelsea won, and they played really well today. Sam Kerr and Fran Kirby were constantly, like I said earlier, making those combo passes to each other and constantly making really intelligent attacking runs that would just catch the defense flat-footed. They'd be getting long balls from way from their own third and getting it into the final third and the attacking third and at least making chances. I know there's a few times when Sam Kerr shot off the mark or maybe overpassed Fran Kirby once or twice, who was in front of goal, but still at the end of the day, they made really intelligent attacking runs and kept the pressure on United to the point where they'd cripple and crumble and they would score. Good case in point on that corner kick when Pernille Harder scored in the first half. Fran Kirby ended up getting the ball and actually nailed it off the post. It came right back to Pernille Harder. She was still there in the box. There's still that presence. They scored, and they just kept that pressure building. So Chelsea were threatening pretty much all game long, so full credit to them. They didn't really need to defend too much because they were just always constantly on the front foot that they weren't tested too much. I believe their keeper only had to make 1 or 2 saves all game. So they played really, really well today. They capitalized on the mistakes when it mattered most, and as a result, they won that game. So overall, I think this is a big win for Chelsea. This is probably one of their toughest tests for both sides. This is probably one of their toughest tests today, and especially since they have a game in hand, this is certainly a convincing argument that they will be title contenders, if not win the title. I'm biased, so I want United to win it. But if Chelsea were to win it at the end of the season, I would not be surprised in the least. They are a very good side, and now they're the only team that remains in the WSL that has yet to lose. I think that in the coming weeks, by the end of the season, they have to play Arsenal and Man City one more time each. If they can get past those 2 tests, I think they've got a real shot at the title. We'll see how that happens down the stretch. All right, guys, so that'll do it for main topic 1 concerning the WSL title implications of today's result and also some post-match reactions for United against Chelsea. I want to know, what did you guys think of the match today, or who do you think is going to win the WSL title by the end of the season? Jump down in the comments below and feel free to let me know your thoughts. All right, so with the first main topic down and out of the way, let's get into the second main topic of the evening. For the second main topic, we're actually going to stay with the WSL for this one. More specifically, we're going to talk a lot about Viv Miedema, who is my personal favorite striker in the entire